Matt and Electra were able to move undetected, even after they had already scaled a big building, slinking into the vents until they were capable of passing through them into the larger area as a whole, passing and moving through the hallways like ghosts. They had to have at least passed 24 guards by now, simply moving past the top floor, towards what appeared to be a panel in the wall. Electra turned to Matt. "I trust you can sense the entryway, Matthew?" Electra replied. Matt nodded. He had also sensed one on the roof of the building, but he could also feel that there were people crowded around it just on the other side. This door, hidden in the wall, was hidden so well that Matt was pretty sure that very few people even knew about it. Electra had made it clear earlier that she didn't know how well defended Red-White's secret was, at least in terms of what they were going to be facing on the other side when they went looking for it, so Matt took a ready stance. Electra smiled, standing next to Matt as he did. She lost herself in her thoughts for a moment. Matt was always so serious. He always took things too seriously. It took the fun out of most things, but still somehow it made her smile. Matt was doing this, all of this, including putting his best black suit on for the occasion to protect a young woman. Heck, Matt was even getting framed for the young lady. He knew once he walked into court tomorrow that police were probably going to be surrounding him because of what White said to them. All because Matt had goaded him into saying it. Matt was special, unique. He was the only one who used the hell that they had learned from Stick in a positive way. He used what Stick had turned both of them into, to force change in a way that people weren't only not afraid of, but that people cheered for. If Electra was being honest, she was actually excited to see it again, all things considered. She pressed the area against the wall as the seams gave way, revealing the entryway to what appeared to be a collection of nonsense at first as the two walked into the space. It was a pretty dark area. The ground and walls were all different shades of black. Random objects adorned nearly every surface. Money, masks, even some weapons and pieces of art. It all seemed random if the pair didn't know the context of the situation. "So this is where they sell stolen evidence," Matt said, taking in the area. He stopped almost immediately after entering the room. There was something off here. He could feel it, but he couldn't tell what it was. The sound just wasn't hitting his ear right. He knew what an empty room sounded like, and this wasn't it. Electra, however, continued moving in unconcerned. "Correct," she replied. "Evidence of this alone would be enough to take out most of the people in this building legally, but I know that's not what you're concerned with." "So where is what I'm concerned with?" Matt asked. Proof of Red-White's blackmail attempt against his supposed boss was here, somewhere. A boss that Matt still hadn't seen, but that everybody that he had asked was afraid of. Matt knew Electra wasn't lying when she was talking about it. Not even Electra was a good enough liar to trick his senses. Was the safe they were looking for somehow special? It wasn't in plain sight, so that meant it had to be hidden. A hidden area even among a hidden area. Which meant it was probably even more protected. Did that have something to do with why this area was so strange? Matt focused himself further to see what was setting himself off about this space, but still to no avail. He could pick up one little detail, though. There was something under the humming of the lights above him. A sound that ran in increments, almost melodic in its motion. The first thing he thought of was a heartbeat, but the increments lasted too long for that. Electra looked around. According to her information, the police issue safes should have been hidden somewhere in this room. Given that they were police issue, they were likely hidden away. The police in the city barely wanted things in plain line of sight, especially since the city was a rather large one, which tended to be a foothold for supernatural criminals, supervillains, and the like. Even they couldn't steal something that they didn't know even was there in the first place. Unfortunately for the good people of the committee, her training put her the slightest bit above even those individuals. So she was able to spot something wrong in the room. The statue that seemed to rise to the ceiling. At first it seemed to blend in, but something about it continued to set her off. She walked closer to it, seeing that it had a sold sign on it. There were a couple of other things in the room that were labeled like that, but she had a feeling this sold sign was just there to keep people away from the area. Not to mention how obvious it was in terms of placement. It was right in the center of the room. In fact, it was so obvious that most people would have just overlooked it if they came here searching for evidence. So she looked even closer. Again, something that most people wouldn't have done. Just like most people wouldn't have noticed the small gaps between the statue's grooves in its mouth. The ones that seemed not to stop once they appeared, not showing any glint of a surface beneath them. Almost as though the statue itself were hollow, like it was hiding something. Electra reached into its mouth, her hand grazing against what she felt like was a dial or a switch. She smirked back to Matt, who now wore a serious expression on his face. One that told her in no uncertain terms that he had found something to be concerned about. In a second, she watched as Matt darted away from where he was, only for the area beneath him to get pulverized by a sound wave? That was what Matt was hearing. He was sure of it now. It was the soft whistling of a sonic weapon being powered up. He threw one of his clubs into the corner of the room by the ceiling, knocking the person in the spot to the ground, on level with the pair of them. Electra spotted her new opponent's mask at the same time Matt interpreted how the sound was being used against them, and in the same moment, they came to the conclusion of who had been hunting them. Shocker, Matt replied. Electra turned to begin the fight, but Matt shook his head. She needed to get the safe open as quickly as possible. Shocker wasn't a quiet villain to fight. Simply avoiding that one attack could have sent half the building on guard. He wanted to keep Daredevil being in the city as under wraps as possible. At least for now. He had just started his life here, away from New York City. The last thing he needed was to complicate it so quickly. It was one thing for Shocker to see him here. It would be another if the police broke into the room. One relatively unreliable witness turns into 50, and next thing you knew, Daredevil in California was going to be on every newspaper in the state. Heck, it could have even gone national. What the heck are you doing out of the city? I thought you'd be Iron Man's problem by now, Daredevil grunted out, mostly in an effort to keep the man's attention on him and off his partner. Shocker's stance shifted. The devil of Hell's Kitchen. I just can't catch a frickin' break, can I? He clenched his gauntlets, the air around them beginning to vibrate. I move across the damn country and I still can't get away from you suits. He threw another attack. Matt quickly dodged underneath it, pushing himself underneath one of the tables, holding what appeared to be a briefcase full of cash. The blast that missed him hit the wall, cracking it apart and splintering an ornate weapon into pieces, showering them across the area like broken glass from a window pane. Fuck, Shocker cursed to himself. You're a spry little bastard, aren't you? And you're a pretty terrible guard, Matt replied. He searched his mind. He assumed Shocker was here to guard the building itself at first, but that wouldn't make sense with how he was fighting. There was no regard to his surroundings. The point was further proven when Matt had to move to the corner of the room, jumping off the wall and landing on top of the lockers bolted to the wall, as the table that he had been under, the money on top of it as well, was nearly evaporated by Shocker. If they hired this guy to protect the contraband, he probably would have tried to move in closer, or at least wait until Matt was somewhere unimportant. Not to mention the fact that he only showed up once Elektra had found a hidden compartment, so that meant he had to work for White. He probably would have let them go if they hadn't been looking for Red White's files. And if he was working for White, then even the corrupt cops in the building probably didn't know about it. After all, White didn't seem like the trusting type. He doubted White shared his plans with anyone. Matt jumped off the locker, the top of it being blown off, before he landed, and he threw his stick to the ground. It bounced off, hitting Shocker directly in the chin, giving Matt the opening he needed to get close. He landed in front of Shocker, landing a blow on his arm, around where his armor was the thinnest, as he kicked his gauntlet to the ground. He ducked underneath a charged swing from Shocker and tackled him into the wall. Shocker collided into a collection of guns behind them, the dust kicking up from them as rubble kicked into the air from his attack. Shocker grunted, slamming his hand on the ground, forcing Matt to jump to the wall for a moment as the ground was pulverized. You know, Herman, among every villain that I fought, you're one of the A-listers, which makes me wonder, what could White possibly have on a guy like you? He asked, landing directly on top of Shocker's gut, making the man cough hard in response. He tried to move his arms once more, only for two sharp side to dig into them, perfectly in the spot where they were the weakest, making them spark in the air. Elektra appeared next to Matt, a satisfied smirk on her face from the throw she just made. As she held up what appeared to be a stack of folders roughly an inch thick, she had managed to get into the safe. The papers were probably going to take all night to sort through, but, well, it was still perfect. Everything was sliding into place. Matt leaned down to the man below him, who growled at him in response. Alright, Herman, I'm going to ask this question again. He got close enough to the point that he could practically smell Shocker's breath through his mask. He could hear Shocker's heart thumping against his chest, one beat after another. Thump, 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 fast enough to vibrate the armor that clung to his body. Unfortunately, that wasn't all the vigilante heard. People were moving to this area, the people who knew about it at the very least. He counted at least 20 officers about 5 minutes from their position. I know you're not working for this place itself. You practically ruined their business model in 3 moves, Matt said. Shocker grunted in response, Matt nodding for a moment before pushing his full weight on top of Shocker, slamming him into a wall. Don't make me ask again, Herman. What, you think I'm scared of you? Shocker said, a choked laugh coming out. Yes, Matt responded, and judging from the way that his heart continued to shatter against his chest, Matt was pretty sure that he was right about that assessment. Something Shocker confirmed with his next word. Shit, he sighed out, the sound slightly muffled by the mask adorning his face. Fine, yeah, you're right. But scared still ain't gonna make me talk. He has something on you, I'm assuming. Electra cut him off, kneeling next to Matt. But we have the ledger now. That's enough information to assure that Mr. White goes away for a long time. Matt furrowed his brow next to her. Electra was talking about just arresting somebody? What was the world coming to? Shocker looked up at her as she continued. Whatever information is on you in this little document will likely never see the light of day. It's not the only copy. Shocker spat. I'm sure of that. I'm sure that's true. But I'm also sure that if we put Mr. White into a compromising position, you'll be the last thought on his mind. Electra continued. You don't fucking get it! Shocker shouted. Matt paused to listen. The guards were 3 minutes away now. I made a mistake. A damn stupid mistake. Shocker propped himself up slightly. There was a guy in New York. I thought he was nothing. A small fry. Between Tombstone and freaks like you, I thought I knew every heavy hitter around. I thought he was just nobody. He was supposed to be nobody. Matt could hear the man's voice shudder to the point that he was almost sure his vocal cords would shatter like glass. I took something. What did you take? Matt asked, Shocker just shaking his head in response. 2 minutes. He didn't have time to push him on this detail. What happened next? The guy who told me about how easy the job was, he was found dead. Brutally. His face was just pounded into mush against the ground. Next day, it was half the people who took info from him, the people who talked to him. 60 people, just gone in a week. It was like a nightmare that never stopped. Shocker replied. So I got out of Dodge. I went here. The next thing I know, I hear rumors that the guy left New York and went to California. It's like he's haunting me. And somehow White found out about your misdeed. I wager that's the reason why you're guarding his things without any compensation, Electra reasoned. The man you stole from, what's his name? Matt asked, Shocker shaking his head almost immediately until Matt grabbed his skull, holding it still, forcing the man to keep eye contact with him. Okay, how about this? I'm gonna say a name, not if it sounds familiar. He responded, the slight hitch in Shocker's breathing telling him that he indeed understood. Wilson Fisk. Shocker didn't move a muscle. He didn't nod, he didn't anything. But his heart did. Or rather, it didn't. It stopped beating for several seconds. Almost like Shocker's body was trying to play dead as a defense mechanism. Like his very veins knew that they didn't have a chance of survival otherwise. Well, it's your lucky day, Herman, Matt replied, Shocker looking up at him. After tomorrow, I don't think White's ever gonna want to be in the same room as Fisk. Your secret's safe. The door to the room flung open. Several officers, prosecutors, even some judges flooding into the area just to see Shocker lying face down, looking up at the ceiling, and not a single other soul around. The only noises in the area being the humming of the lights above and the soft laughing of Herman Schultz, the Shocker, as the officers surrounded him. That fucking idiot. White, you fucking idiot. He repeated, not even registering the people around him in the slightest. The next morning, outside the courthouse, Matt stood with Electra, the both of them looking only a little worse for wear. Thankfully, the both of them were excellent at functioning with very little sleep in their tanks. Something that just came from their training. If they had to thank Stick for one thing, it was that. Pheoenix left me a message, Matt said. The officers are officially letting Maya roam free in the building for now. Meaning they're getting ready to detain you, Electra concluded. Congratulations, your poke the bear strategy has gone exactly as anticipated. Now all you have to do is remember what we stayed up for the last 6 hours reading, and your victory is all but assured. I'll try not to pull it out unless I have to. Our trump card will probably make me to have a lot of explaining to do with Nick. Matt sighed, clutching his cane. Plus, backing White into a corner would just be beneficial. If Matt pulled his get-out-of-jail card too soon, it would just look suspicious. It would look like he was trying to blackmail him. But if he backed White into a corner beforehand, made it clear to everybody around him that White was indeed the killer, or at least the attempted killer, considering the fact that Mia was still alive, something that most people didn't know, then he was sure that revealing their trump card information would have significantly less consequence for him and the others. Plus, I'm sure the others worked up quite the defense last night, It'd be a shame not to see it, Matt joked. I take it you're not staying to watch the show? He asked. I'll be around, Matthew. If you want to control the trial, though, having the assassin White paid to kill you standing at your side seems like it might throw him into a bit of a state, she smirked. Of course I could do that if that's what you prefer. Matt shook his head. No, that might put some dangerous ideas in his head. He might get the wrong idea about what kind of person I am. Or who I am. Especially since he already thinks I can see. Do you think he knows about the stolen documents by now? Electra asked, Matt shaking his head. Doubtful. I mean, Shocker's arrest was in the papers, so chances are White at least contacted him. Matt said thoughtfully, as he took his first step up the court stairs. But since we had that little chat with him last night, I'm pretty sure Shocker knows that silence is best if he wants White out of his way. He probably said he successfully protected the little secret. Well, then it should be a fun surprise then, Electra smiled softly. That it should, Matt agreed. Thank you, Electra, he said, as he continued walking into the building, disappearing behind the double golden doors of the Hall of Justice, into a second major fight within the last couple days. You're welcome, Matthew, Electra said on the outside, knowing that Matt could still hear her. She felt a feeling in her chest, a pang of nervousness. It was a stupid feeling. She knew that Matt would walk out of there in a few hours, but she also knew that if something did go wrong in there, that Matt was the kind of person who would be stubborn enough to stay in a prison that he could easily break out of. It was still insane to her that a man like that would confine himself to other people's law. But if that was the path that he had chosen to take, she would trust him to see it through. I'll see you soon. Matt moved into the defendant's lobby, already having a small police escort with him. They had wasted no time in surrounding him, practically the moment he stepped into the building. Thankfully, none of them had grabbed him or shoved him around. They were just there. Maya quickly rushed up and hugged Matt the second he appeared in her line of sight. Ow, careful there, Miss Faye. I wouldn't want to fall on my big day. Everyone told me what you did. Maya slightly began tearing up, only for Matt to place a hand on the girl's head. I'm just glad you're getting the chance to stretch your legs. Matt smiled at Maya's sniffling face. I still want to stand in court, beside you, beside all of you. Even if it's just for emotional support, You're not even a lawyer, Miss Faye. Francisca responded next to her. There's a great deal of risk that comes simply with standing next to Mr. Murdock here. She glanced at our boss. The outcome of this case will have knock-on effects regardless of the outcome. Red White is a powerful man. We will be openly defying him. I don't care, Maya replied, looking into Francisca's eyes. In the moment, she could see that Francisca looked strange. Whenever the girl had come to visit Maya in the past couple of days, she always had a look of certainty about her. Something at her core that just told her whoever she was. She had mentioned to Maya that she was beginning to feel weird and working on her case recently, but it seemed like it had gotten way weaker now. Like she was standing out on a ledge, trying to determine whether to jump to something unknown or just stay put. Maya took Francisca's hand. And I don't think you care either. Francisca felt herself pulled a bit more into the moment, finding her footing, at least for now. I don't care about Red White, no, Francisca responded, clearing her throat. Myself and Mr. Wright have been more than prepared for anything he could throw at us for today. We spent long enough practicing last night, after all. She gestured to Pheoenix. Pheoenix just looked at the girl in front of him, as though the thought of last night brought something up in his head. He looked almost deep in thought. Matt could practically hear the gears turning in his head. Whatever they had talked about once he and Electra left must have been something. A snap from Francisco's whip forced Pheoenix into the moment. What? Oh, yeah. Pheoenix rubbed the back of his neck. You don't gotta worry, Matt. We got this in the bag. I've been getting my objection voice all warmed up and everything. He joked, Francisca groaning in response. I won't let you down, Matt. I promise. Come on, Nick. There's no need to get that serious. Matt replied, Pheoenix cracking a grin, as the door beside them opened, the bailiff waving everybody inside. Matt and Maya moved in, and soon it was just Francisca and Pheoenix standing at the threshold, just a few steps away. What we discussed last night, were you able to get that accomplished? Francisca asked, Pheoenix nodding, placing something in the girl's hand. Yeah, it was kind of easy. Once you pass the bar in our state, either option is viable. You just need somebody employing you, which I guess you have, you know? Pheoenix replied. I picked it up from the court office this morning, after you filled out the paperwork last night. He looked down slightly. Francisca glanced at the object in her hand, feeling its weight sink into her skin, almost like it was cutting her. Or maybe cutting through what she used to be, digging into the person who she had the potential to become. You know, you still don't have to do this, right? I mean, Matt said he was fine with your title, and you've been his assistant for a while. I know you probably worked really hard for it, graduating as young as you did, Pheoenix said. Franziska soon shot him a glare that quickly softened. That's a very foolish thing to say, she said. She saw her brother dig into Maya Fey a lot, and she couldn't help the way she felt when she saw that. It was irritating. She felt like something was just itching at her from under her skin. The girl was as innocent as they came. That was made very clear every single time Maya visited her in the detention center. And every time that was made clear to her, it was made even more clear to her that it was ridiculous for Miles to be treating her this way. The same way that Franziska would have treated her had this happened a few years ago, and she'd been the prosecution. Last night, the way her colleagues spoke about her, about wanting to protect people in general, about believing in someone with their whole heart, about wanting to shield their clients against people, against prosecutors, against the system that saw them as nothing more than wins and losses on a board. Even her brother's words to her after the last trial rung through her head. He had all but told her that she was being ridiculous, that the path that her father had laid out for her, the path of a prosecutor, the path of a Von Karma, wasn't going to allow her to continue to flip-flop like this. That she should either continue down her path, continue following her father's teachings, following the path that she knew she was supposed to from the moment she was born, had been molded to achieve from the moment she was born, or she would have to follow a different path. Do you remember what I asked you when the others left last night? I think it was hour 3 of our mock trials. Yeah, I do. You asked me why I became a lawyer, right? He asked, scratching the back of his head. Franziska nodded, allowing a smile to crack the edges of her mouth. You had all talked so passionately about defending Miss Fey. I had never heard any prosecutor speak with that kind of passion about, well, anything, aside from my father and his perfect record. I think being away from him for so long and being Mr. Murdock's assistant, I didn't have his sense of right and wrong pushing in my head. I had to forge my own, and Matthew was helping me see that for myself. She shook her head. You became an attorney because you wanted to save my brother, because you saw what he was becoming. The demon prosecutor. I do not know what I aspire to be, but I believe that the path that you have chosen, a path born of wanting to help somebody because you care for them, is much more in line with the kind of person that I would like to become. At least I think it's much more in line with who I would like to be than my father's ideals. Now that I look at it, the more it just keeps playing in my head, I realize that perfection isn't something to strive for. Especially when perfection means closing out anybody who might need my help. Well, I think you definitely thought about this a lot, Pheoenix said, laughing, walking into the courtroom, reaching out a hand for Franziska to follow. And I think that Matt was right to let you be his assistant. Franziska hid her smile beneath her hair as she took the man's hand, walking into the bright space where their battle would rage. How foolish of you.
Court is now in session for the trial of,
The judge on the stand looked down at his paper that adorned the podium.
I'm sorry, it looks like there's some kind of misprint here.
There is no misprint, Your Honor, Edgeworth replied on the prosecution side. New testimony has led the prosecution to shift charges to Mr. Matthew Murdock.
I see.
The judge's eyes slightly widened.
In that case, Mr. Murdock?
The judge asked. Yes, Your Honor, Matt asked casually.
Who is the leading defense in your case?
The judge asked. That would be Pheoenix Wright, Your Honor, Matt replied, Pheoenix nodding shakily in response. Though I might still chime in here or there if I have something to say.
Oh, I see.
The judge wiped his eyes.
Well, Mr. Wright, is the defense ready?
Pheoenix looked to Franziska, who nodded. Before Pheoenix could even let a single word out of his mouth, he heard Edgeworth chuckle, the entire audience looking towards him.
Is something the matter, Mr. Edgeworth?
The judge's voice rang once more.
No, Your Honor. Just as before, I just found it amusing that there's a prosecutor who's at the defense stand. Clearly one who doesn't know her place.
Edgeworth replied, shrugging.
Seeing such a thing, it just brings a sense of amusement to me is all. Like seeing a dog meow. I see. Well, may I have a quick moment with the prosecution, Your Honor?
Francisca asked, the judge sweating as he saw Francisca's hand coil around her whip in anticipation of his response. The judge quickly nodded, barely getting a word out before Francisca was already across the courtroom, directly next to the prosecution bench.
Do you wish to chastise me yet again for following the Von Karma path, Francisca?
Miles Edgeworth asked, crossing his arms.
I was merely pointing out what you already know. Yes, little brother, I am aware of that,
Francisca responded, her brother raising an eyebrow.
You are correct, Miles, in your entirety. There is no room for doubt in your words.
He locked eyes with her as she continued.
I was confused about where my place was, and where my path was.
I see. Well, then you can feel free to leave the courtroom at your leisure, Miles responded, gently gesturing toward the door. Francisca shook her head, forcing a smile on her face this time that was a bit more unnatural, like she was trying to bring up courage, even if she didn't have any.
A foolish misunderstanding from a fool like yourself is hardly a surprise,
she replied.
My place is very much still in this courtroom.
Miles's eyes widened in response, as the implication began flooding his mind.
But, Francisca, your father
is incorrect, she said, gritting her teeth as she did. It was like two sides of her brain were warring with each other. She could barely manage to keep her head on straight.
And it quite literally took me years to realize it,
she said, unbuttoning her prosecutor's badge from her chest.
A Von Karma is perfect in every way, but what use is perfection if it tears through lives like cinder? What use is perfection when the one man who treats me like family, who has been more brotherly to me than my own brother, Francisca, when someone who's been in my life more than my own father, what use is perfection if it means that man must suffer for crimes he didn't commit, all for the sake of something as meaningless as a record?
She asked, silence hanging between the two of them.
For years, I blindly followed the creed of a man who I'm not even sure cared about me. In some ways, that makes me a much bigger fool than most, but no longer.
She placed her badge on the surface of Miles's table. Her chest already felt hollow without it, like she had just placed a piece of her heart down alongside it. But it also felt lighter, easier.
Think about what you're doing, Francisca,
Miles said, his body too shocked to put much emotion into his tone. Francisca took a deep breath in.
People call you the demon prosecutor, Miles,
Francisca replied,
and they have called me significantly worse.
She smiled bitterly as she opened her palm, a golden badge staring back at her. One that, unlike her old one, had no history behind it, no expectations, no legacy. And slowly, she pinned it to where her old badge had been. She nearly felt her throat close in the motion.
And very likely, we've deserved the titles. I'm not sure about much right now, but I am sure that it would be foolish, for both of us, to continue down the path laid down for us any longer.
Miles looked down at the girl, the emotion draining from his face, as he picked up Francisca's prosecutor badge from the counter.
I think it's time for you to get back to your side, Defense Attorney Von Karma,
he said coolly.
Francisca closed her eyes.
I see. She took a single step away from him before stopping cold.
I used to look up to you quite a bit, you know, when we were both children. It was something I'd never bring myself to admit, certainly not in front of Father, but you were a wonderful boy, before everything, before Father molded us into the people we are now, before he split us apart and sent us to different ends of the world. You know, Miles, this case is the first time I've seen you in years,
Francisca said. Miles nodded, no words escaping his lips.
Now that I've found you again, I do not intend on letting you go that easily. You will be free of your self-made shackles. This I promise you.
Francisca continued her stride, once more moving across the courtroom as she stood by Pheoenix once again.
Are you okay? He asked. Are you still intent on saving my brother, like you told me before?
Francisca asked, Pheoenix nodding in response.
Then I will be.
She turned to Matt.
After all, I believe I still have a family here.
Matt grinned at the girl's words, as Pheoenix turned to the judge.
The defense is ready, Your Honor. Red White took his first steps on the stand, the prosecution not waiting a moment before calling him. Edgeworth's look of emotional turmoil was gone, replaced with the pompous circumstance of who he always was. White cleared his throat, calling the attention of every soul in the courthouse towards him. He hadn't gotten any less irritating to Matt. You wish to know the title of my personage? White had asked to the crowd when the judge asked him to introduce himself. Great, so he's still talking nonsense. Matt groaned. He couldn't stop even for a second, apparently. Not even when he was just introducing himself. Even Pheoenix was sweating just listening to the man, forgetting his own nervousness in favor of confusion. White turned to the defense team, smiling so widely, so big, that half of his face was replaced by his pearly white molars. A shine so bright and artificially hit their eyes that the defense team could almost swear that they were staring at a slab of marble stuffed into the man's face. I hope you made peace with your god, Mr. Lawyer. White smiled, only for the sound of a whip cracking through the air to force him back. Keep your idle threats in your tongue, Franziska snarled. The only thing you need to speak is your testimony. Is that clear? Franziska asked. White forced his composure, snarling at the girl as he prepared a retort, only for the same sound to ring once more, the whip cracking centimeters from his skin. Is that clear? She hissed once more. Positively, I assure you. It will be perfect. Mistakes just aren't my forte. White said quickly, straightening his tie to maintain an image of control as best he could. Matt snorted slightly. It was good to know that his assistant was just as intimidating as a fully fledged defense attorney, as she ever was as a prosecutor. White went on to continue his testimony soon after. His voice was still unsure at first as he described himself at the table with Miss May, discussing work details with her, but soon he got into the swing of his lie. Discussing how he had seen somebody chase Mia Fey around her office, specifically that he had seen the person chase her to the left corner of her room. That alone was enough to make the judge pause. You're saying that the assailant chased her? But, sir... The judge replied, not being able to find the words. The defense, Mr. Murdock is... Blind? Yes, my fantastic self thought so as well, White replied. Matt grinned slightly. The little innocuous comment he had made with White during their last meeting had really taken root in his head, and it was about to backfire pretty badly. But my eyes did not deceive me. In fact, he might have been the one trying to deceive us all, White replied, looking up to the audience, projecting his voice as though he were a performer on the stage. Is that not right, Mr. Lawyer? White turned to Matt, who cocked his head to the side. Objection! Pheoenix shouted. That is a completely unsubstantiated claim. Hold it, Miles Edgeworth responded across from him. This man claims to have seen a chase. That chase itself is the substantiation. If Mr. Murdock is capable of chasing that woman, that alone proves that he must possess sight. It's up to you to... 1 second, Matt said, clearing his throat, taking off his glasses for the crowds to see, as silence soon fell. It was even from a distance unmistakable. His eyes possessed the same strange blue hue that many blind individuals possess. His gaze locked onto nobody present, not even for a moment. Miles Edgeworth just stared at him. It was honestly unbelievable. When he had spoken to Red White before the trial, he seemed convinced of himself. White was so completely sure of himself that Miles could see that sureness passing on to him. It was a mistake he needed to remind himself never to repeat. Miles Edgeworth cleared his throat. This alone proves nothing, Mr. Murdock. There are a number of different tactics you could use to fool this court. Matt smiled as he put his glasses back on. White slowly closed his gaping mouth as he stared at Murdock. Yes, you could still be faking it. He... Could be wearing contacts, Matt offered, the slightest grin on his face. Could be a very good actor. Or maybe I could have followed somebody by sense of hearing. All of those are possible, I grant you, Matt replied. Just what's your game here, Mr. Lawyer? Game? I don't have a game, Matt replied, patting Pheoenix on the back. I know that little show won't be enough to sway you to my side entirely. I just thought it might get us off the matter of my sight for a moment, so my lawyer can do his job. Edgeworth smiled, shaking his head. I see. So you're saying that your blindness is somehow incidental to this case? No, not really, Matt replied. I'm just saying that we have much quicker ways of deciding my guilt or innocence here. If you would allow my team to examine your expert witness, he replied. Unless, of course, you want to have a doctor examine me now to just get this squared away, Matt asked. Edgeworth did ponder that for a moment, but
Murdock was far too easy at the moment for his liking. There was every chance that any competent doctor would indeed confirm Murdock's condition, which would mean that he couldn't have behaved in the manner White described. And if that was the case, then chances were he was innocent. Most judges would come to that conclusion. Though, if he were truly... No, Edgeworth shook his head. No person could escape his grasp. The only way to make sure that every criminal suffered in his presence was to make sure that every defendant went down. No exceptions. No, Mr. Murdock, that would not be necessary. Please, your team may cross-examine. Matt nodded, taking a step back for Pheoenix to take center stage. To Phoenix's credit, he did a great job. He had first picked apart the statement that White made about the girl dodging to the left. It had contradicted everything Miss May said, and Pheoenix pointed out that she would have left herself even further trapped inside the area had she behaved that way. The second Pheoenix pointed out this odd sentence, White began to babble, almost incoherently, panicking slightly. Matt smirked. Of course, Mia's movement patterns would have been a lot easier to establish if there was a body to examine, but he knew full well that that would be impossible. It was still something, though. Pheoenix had managed to establish unreliability in his story. But if Matt knew anything, it was that Pheoenix Wright wasn't the kind of person who was going to be satisfied with a small victory. He always went for the whole thing. There is, of course, one way for both you and Miss May to have been correct, Pheoenix smirked, slamming his hand down on the table. That was, if you were looking at things from the other side. The crowd went silent, all except for Edgeworth, who banged his fist on the desk. Hold it. You can't be serious. Do you have any idea what you're insinuating? You have no proof of such an accusation. The other lawyer is quite correct, Mr. Lawyer. There's no reason to resort to such incognanimous tricks. That's still not a word, man. I can assure you that I was in fact not present there. In fact, let me... A whip cracked through the area. Not so fast, you perjury-filled oaf, Franziska shouted. Was it not you who stated on the stand that you never make mistakes? White shrunk under Franziska's gaze. It was just a slight... The whip cracked through the air yet again, as Franziska met her brother's gaze. You say there is no proof he was in the building. Would providing such proof suffice as reason to push the witness to amend his testimony properly, little brother? Franziska asked, Miles grunting in response. His sister. When he looked into her eyes, he didn't see the same hesitation as before. A Von Karma with purpose. There was nothing in the world more dangerous. He forced his confident smile back on. I assure you, Miss Von Karma, if there was any kind of proof of something like that, I would have at least heard about it by now. Those words weren't smart on Edgeworth's part. Within a mere moment, Pheoenix presented the piece of evidence that he had been holding onto. The footprint, or rather the picture of the footprint that he had taken from the crime scene. Take that! He shouted, as the crowds of onlookers stared down at the evidence. The judge leaned closer into it. This is a footprint taken at the scene of the crime, Pheoenix explained. Oh, I see, and, what does this prove exactly? The judge asked, scratching his long flowing beard. Pheoenix hunched over, Matt patting him on the back in response. Sometimes you have to spell things out, Nick, he explained. The footstep is from a size 15 men's shoe. My own feet are size 11, and I doubt anybody thinks Miss Fay wore that size. Do you, Mr. Edgeworth? Matt asked. Miles, in response, took a long breath before turning to Red White, who was currently sweating through his shirt. Mr. White, I think it's about time you admit to your crime. White's ears perked up as he temporarily shook off his stunned state, turning to the defense stand. Ah, yes. How silly of me to think I could get away with it for this long. Mr. Lawyer. Pheoenix looked to Matt and back to White in confusion. Ah, yes, my apologies. Mr. Red-Headed Lawyer. Yes, Matt replied. That piece of evidence you showed me in my office the other day. Do you still have it? He asked, Matt nodding in response. He knew exactly where this was going. He set the bug receiver that he had been holding onto the desk, and White's eyes lit up like they were suddenly filled with fire. And what exactly does that little doohickey there connect to, might I ask? To a bug device found in Miss Fay's office, Franziska replied before Matt could, her irritation seeping into every word as she realized what Matt had mere moments before her. Exactamundo, Mrs. Lawyer. I was in that office a few mere days before the crime, planting that bug. The rest of that night, I was in that hotel room with Miss Fay, watching as the whole thing went down. He smirked. Objection! There is no Hold it. There is no evidence that he wasn't in that room, Mr. Wright. Edgeworth replied, his eyes narrowing into a slant as he gave a glare that seemed to push past all of the people in the room.
Evidence is everything in a court of law, I might remind you.
Everything for the defense, Maya argued. You just keep saying stuff, and we just have to take your word for it. Where's your evidence, huh? Edgeworth jolted in his seat, as though Maya had just slapped him. Franziska continued on the girl's train of thought.
Agreed. All we have is the word of a self-professed criminal on when he planted an illegal wiretap device. That is hardly perfect information, Miles,
she said, her frustration tamped back down. Franziska was back to being her calm, composed self, while Edgeworth's calmness fell further and further away from him, as though it was slipping through his grasp.
Asking us to take information like that? Something based on practically no evidence. That's hardly fair. Fair? Franziska, the law isn't supposed to be fair, it's supposed to be effective,
Edgeworth snarled. Wait, the law isn't supposed to be fair? Is he even hearing himself? Maya asked. Franziska paused. It wasn't so long before she had met Matt Murdock that she could picture herself saying the same words.
No, I don't believe he is,
Franziska responded, staring back at the girl. She gave Maya a pat on the shoulder.
You don't need to worry, Miss Faye. Mr. Wright has the situation well in hand.
She directed her attention to Pheoenix, who, even in his sweat-covered state, still had some semblance of composure.
We're not out of tricks yet, I assure you. Mr. Wright?
Pheoenix slowly nodded, though he was still concerned. This was basically their last piece of evidence, and if it didn't put an end to this, if Edgeworth had something else, anything else, then he was pretty sure he wouldn't be able to do anything at the moment. It kind of made him hesitant. In a lot of ways, this would decide, well, everything. Your Honor, the defense would like to submit this photo to the stand. It's Mr. White leaving the hotel grounds. You can see it's time-stamped.
Oh, so it is, the judge stammered. Wait.
He nearly jumped out of his seat.
This is the night of the murder,
he shouted, staring down at the paper.
It's right in the time of death window.
Wait, what? Edgeworth pounded his hand on the desk.
How did you get a hold of this?
Mr. Murdock did. I just happened to be present, Franziska replied. It was mostly true. Mr. Murdock had gotten the ball rolling, but they had gotten some outside help in getting the picture. Not that explaining it right now was really in her purview.
But of course, a thorough investigation is how justice is supposed to be served. Wouldn't you agree?
White's elbows clattered across the desk as he slammed his body up and down against it. He began breathing heavier and heavier as he looked around the courtroom, almost like a deer facing down the barrel of a gun, seeing no way out. He gripped his arm. Very little is done these days without a camera in your face, Pheoenix puffed up, seeing the defeated expression crossing White's face grow as time went on. At least you smiled for your close-up.
You now have motive and opportunity, Mr. White. I don't believe there's any getting out of this. Mr. Judge, I believe I would like to leave, and...
No matter what you might have on the judge, Mr. White, I don't think he's obliged to do anything right now. It would be a real bad look for a judge to just let a clear suspect loose with such overwhelming evidence, Matt replied. Especially since I'm willing to bet that the shoes you're wearing right now are the same ones you were wearing then. If the tracks match, I'd say that evidence is even stronger. Yeah, and evidence is everything, after all. Right, Mr. Edgeworth? Pheoenix grinned. Matt held in a snort at the sound of Edgeworth's grinding teeth hitting his ears. It was a shame he was the only one who could probably hear it. White tried one more time. Assaulted Mia Fey. I believe that should be the end of your sentence, Matt replied, his smile spreading to everybody else in the team, one by one, until the tension among them had all but faded.
I see. I guess I see no further reason to prolong this trial, the judge said, glancing down at Matt. I find the defendant, Matthew Murdock. Hold it!
Edgeworth shouted, so loudly that Matt was halfway sure the man had scratched up his vocal cords doing it.
I believe that you have done an excellent job of casting a possibility. But given that the prosecution hasn't had nearly as good a chance to look into things as you had the same time as we did, Mr. Edgeworth, and more resources,
Franziska grunted.
Nevertheless, there are certainly a few possibilities we could look into, especially regarding the hotel tapes now that they exist, to make sure we know everything before Mr. Murdock is found not guilty.
A whip cracked through the area.
You complete and utter fool. There's no need for such theatrics, Franziska. We have another day for the trial. It doesn't have to end now.
Edgeworth smiled, a smile that made her sick to her stomach. He had a plan, and she didn't want to see it.
This is bad, Pheoenix swallowed. Agreed, Matt replied. What? Why? It's just a day, right? Maya asked. My brother is referred to as the demon prosecutor for a reason. Franziska looked down. In this day, he is liable to find any possible fragment of information that he can twist. That is, unless he just makes something up. Not to mention that Red-White exists. If there's anybody willing to forge evidence to help the prosecution, it's him. Wait, but we can't just let that happen, can we? Maya asked, looking to the others who were now silent. Mr. Murdock! Matt wasn't sure about this, pulling out his trump card here, that was, in front of everybody. It would still raise a lot of questions, especially if White blabbed about where it was before Matt got his hands on it. He was halfway willing to just take the leap of faith that the team would be able to get him out in another day. But then he saw Franziska. She looked at Matt, clenching her fists as she did. I cannot do anything else. I will give it my all tomorrow, you can be sure of that. Her voice rang with a pang of resoluteness, but he could hear the undertones. The undertones in her voice. They reminded him a lot of something that he saw in his line of work. Well, his other line of work. Fear. Franziska was afraid. Afraid for him. He knew she had come to respect him in their time together, but this was something else. It was how he felt whenever his friends were... Oh, so he had gotten through to her after all. She considered him a friend. And a very good one at that if she was this scared. The girl had basically given up her whole life because of the path that he had put her on when they had first met forever ago. When he had first saw the dark path that she was thrown on. When he had understood the kind of person that she would have grown up to be had he had not at least tried to intervene. And because of his influence, she made that leap of faith. And if Matt did get arrested here, then Franziska, the new Franziska, she would be alone. Separated not just from him, but from her family, her old identity, everything the girl had given up with her badge. She would have nowhere that her new identity was safe to be. No person it was safe to be with. He put a hand on her shoulder. That won't be necessary, Franziska, Matt replied, everyone at the defense table turning to him. They were trying to keep their composure, but he could feel them trembling without even trying too hard. He cleared his throat right before the judge was about to adjourn court for the rest of the day. Your Honor, before we take Mr. Edgeworth's suggestion, I would like to say a few words to our witness. The judge nodded, White having regained enough composure to plaster a smile back on. Well, go ahead then, Mr. Lawyer. We all have things to do, and I'm certain a holding cell is waiting for you. Yeah, I'm sure one's waiting. It's your reaction that will tell us who it's for, Matt responded, White furrowing his brow. July 7th, 1:43 p.m., San Francisco docks, Matt said calmly. The words made White's heart pound just the slightest bit quicker in response. Well, whatever could that mean? You don't know? Matt replied. There's an area there that your company supervises, provides the camera security for. Of course, during that period, the camera data was lost, supposedly. Hold it! Edgeworth bellowed, slamming his fist against the wood surface before him. What could this possibly have to do with... I want to hear it, White shouted towards Edgeworth, his eyes shaking so much that it was like he was trying to keep track of 1,000 different things in the room that nobody else could see. What do you mean, supposedly, Mr. Lawyer? Oh, nothing much. Just that some photos from that day might be kicking around that somebody might have forgotten to delete. Somebody who may have wanted insurance against somebody by the name of... Matt began slowly tilting his head down to hide the smirk on his face. Stop! White shouted, glancing between the people in the room. The confusion between them was so palpable that Matt could have sworn that he heard it rolling across his fingertips. How? How? Oh my, is the poor man all right? White looked up to a voice from the crowds, the voice of Electra Nachios, outside of her assassin attire, though her face was immediately recognizable. He went as white as a sheet as she locked eyes on him. It would seem he's about to pass out. She was the only one who knew about his hiding spot, the only one who would have interacted with the lawyer. Did she have something to do with this? But that meant it had to be real, it had to... He was cornered. There was no way out. Your Honor, I retract my previous statements. I'm guilty. Make with the gavel! White snarled, looking up at him. The judge was startled so much he jumped higher than when Franziska cracked her whip. Yes, I find the defendant, Matthew Murdock, and the previous defendant, Maya Fey.
He closed his eyes, raising his gavel to the air.
Not guilty,
he declared, confetti falling from the sky as the others turned to Matt. Congratulations, Matt grinned, the others clapping him on the back. Pheoenix hugged the man so tightly that he nearly broke his ribcage. Matt knew there was more work to be done here. Everybody else would probably want to ask him about what he had just said to Wright, for one thing. And this Wilson Fisk guy, whoever he was. Matt was going to have to find out more about him. To provoke that kind of reaction in Wright, he must have been serious. But right now, smiling at his best friend, the sister of his closest mentor, not to mention his hyper-serious apprentice who had finally managed to crack a real smile, he was just happy being happy. Especially since one more thought went through his head. Mia was going to get to come home soon, though explaining that to the people who thought she was dead, that was going to be a little more complicated. Hey everyone, thanks for checking in on another episode of Earth OCU, this time Ace Attorneys. I really thought this series could use an update, since it's been a couple of months since my last post of this series, and I've been dying to get back into it personally. So I really hope you guys enjoyed it. It was really neat getting to design Francisca's turn, especially since this version of her has spent so much time with Matt since becoming a lawyer in the first place, that her outlook is just so much different from her counterpoints at this point in the story. I am especially excited for when this version of Francisca gets the DL6 case, but that's probably a while off. Anyway, before I keep rambling anymore, if you like this video, please be sure to leave a like to let YouTube know you're enjoying yourself, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on the future of this or any other series that I produce. In the meantime, I've been your captain, and it's been a pleasure to take you on another tour of the strongest Earth in the multiverse. Bye now!